if you create life, and then people say, well, what's life? You're not creating life because only God can create life. Well, even in Scripture, doesn't source say?
Well, explain the Nephilim to me then. I see that argument is void because Genesis 6:4 displaces that. If you had fallen watchers or angels intermixing with a human, you have DNA mixing, right? It created life. And if you read the book of Enoch, God said, I had no part of those bastards. They have no part of me in them. Implies you can create life outside of God.
Well, and it's
Sorry
interesting.
to step in on that, but
no, that's okay, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I appreciate that. And I wonder sometimes too with these biblical scriptures and with the way that the Nephilim and other entities and people are described. Now, if you read the Old Testament, where there's multiple scriptures that talk about how God essentially tells his people, and I can't remember exactly which ones, to go kill every man, woman, child, and even the livestock and even the animals of these specific areas. And I've heard Nephilim or something similar to that, and therefore that they were evil, and a lot of people kind of have that mindset. But what if what we read about was from you usually only hear about the history of the victors. And with the Mandela effect, like you talked about, and with so much out there that has been mistranslated or used for certain purposes, what's to say that the Holy Bible that we have access to today hasn't been skewed or misrepresented or altered or certain things done to it to be the ultimate mind control tool to make people think something that could be completely wrong? And I bring this up to a lot of people, and usually what I hear is, well, that's God's foundation. God is not going to let anything interfere with that foundation. And if that's the case, hey, I get it. I understand. Yet what if? I mean, because there's enough in the Bible that contradicts things to me. And when I go to websites, like there's this website in particular that kind of has a lot of the saints in the Bible that you would look at from a person that maybe isn't religious or wasn't raised that way. And keep in mind, I was raised Christian. I mean, I've read the Bible. I've read Revelation over a dozen times. I've studied it. I've researched it. And there's some incredible information in there. But there's a lot of stuff in there that you read, especially from somebody that maybe wasn't raised that way. And you're going, what the? That's murder. That's torture. That shouldn't be there. That's not right. I don't want to go stone my kids to death if they don't believe in God.
And I love this fact. You see, my position is this: every religion is man-made. That's a fact. Every religion is man-made, and it is man-inspired and man-propagated. And, there's a lot of different religions that predate Christianity, predate Judaism. And I say, it's the evolution of what man does. And as far as, when people say, well, do you believe the Bible? And I said, listen, it's not, if you're telling me that the Bible is an historically accurate document, no, it's a literal document. It's a literary document that has been taken from other people. But the one thing I've never figured out, Rex, is how Gentiles become such experts in Judaism. I mean, it was their religion, right? Hebrews, that's where it started from. And if you read their religion, I always tell people, go and read Josephus. Read the Antiquities of the Jews and the Wars of the Jews, and you'll get a much better understanding of the religion that people lay claim to. But here's the point. I mean, they have stories in there of some Americans. They got stories of flying saucers in there. And I'm going, this is a cool book. Because if you get out of the dogma, there's some wild stuff in there that says that this planet back in the day had to be like the Wild West. I mean, there's different aliens in there. There's flying ships in there. And they talk about different deities in there.
Right.
And I ask myself, why do we think that those haven't changed today? Because I contend those gods didn't go anywhere. They're just grooving, as John Candy said in the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And he said, as the mighty river flows, so I go. That's what I think is happening. And listen, if these archons are trapped, you don't hear this often. You see, I think that planet Earth, I think our solar system is in lockdown. And what is here is a bizarre picture that the reason why we don't have memories is that because if we did, we would probably be revolting right now and saying we've had enough of this. But we're hypnotized. And I think, Rex, that we're playing the part out word for word by the script that has been fed to us. And that's just my belief.
It's almost as if the DNA that somebody has is that script, and some people can rewrite it a little bit. I mean, they can add to it, take a little bit out. Okay, I'm going to add another chapter or something like that. Yet that's the foundation. And the more people learn to break out of that, such as critical thinking, such as expanding the mind, thinking for yourself, listening to your thoughts oftentimes. And if you can get to the point to where you can clear your mind and learn how to do other things with the mind, with your imagination, one thing that I would recommend to people that want to expand their mind in a very mental aptitude without having to do any dogmatic type stuff is there's a book called Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Barton. And if you just read it to research it, it's a good way to learn how many people that, such as monks in monasteries and stuff like that, what they do to get to the point to where they can stand on boiling, or, like scorching hot coals, walking across broken glass, stuff like that. It's just all kind of mental things because we have these abilities. And I think that the problem is with some teachings, the teachers will say, okay, if you do that, then you're summoning a demon or something like that. And I'm sure there's people out there that do summon demons to do that kind of stuff. But it's just like riding a bicycle up a very steep mountain. You have to practice to get to the point to where you can ride up that mountain at 20 miles an hour like the guys in the Tour de France or something like that, just an analogy. So it's mental things you can do. And I think that if we do that, that gives us a better chance to defend ourselves from the subliminal programming, from the corporate masters, from the consumerism, and then realize we can help each other by just learning how to introspect into ourselves and see what's going on. But man, I really like this Ghost in the Machine series that you're doing, and I was hoping maybe we could talk a little bit more about some of the nanotech and stuff that's out there. I was looking at these microchips the other day. They're called Smart Dust, and they're literally they're like the size of they're bigger than a piece of sand, but it's so tiny that you really have to look closely on your finger to see it. And this stuff now is getting pretty quick. IBM's working on some stuff that's got these microchips that are actually just a little bit larger than a piece of DNA. They're 3 times the width of a DNA strand, and they're running 4 times faster than many of the silicone chips today that are put in computers. So where's this going with the Smart Dust and stuff?
Well, I think that when you start looking at it, transhumanism, and when you mentioned that word a little while ago, it sparked in me because that's exactly what we're talking. We're talking about the transformation of the human experience. And nanotechnology is just another extension to, I don't know if it's life, if it's artificial life, but it's all connected. And the theories that I'm hearing, particularly where the nanobots are concerned, is that the Japanese have already shown that they have built larger prototypes of where one nanobot is created, manufactured, and as you begin to add to them, they begin to form a collective consciousness. And they now know that you can program them. So let's just say that, and I think that this technology is already in alpha state, if it's not already in beta development, but I could inject you, Rex, and let's say that I found the aorta going up through your neck, that where we saw a buildup of plaque. Well, instead of inducing you with chemicals, artificial compounds to dissolve that, what we could actually do is summon these nanobots to that particular area, the collective consciousness, when they arrive, they will clear that path, and then they exit the body through normal means in which we, in fact, get rid of water and what have you. So I say, well, if you could do that, what if we start getting into the synaptic pathways of my brain? I mean, what if I'm laying down code that I have something in my head that I don't even know about? And I think that this, again, people say, well, this is far-fetched. No, this is actually happening. We talk about DNA. The thing I found the other day, there was a show on there, Expedition Unknown. They found a woolly mammoth, and they found it intact. It dated it back to about 49,000 years ago. They found DNA that was alive, a complete strand. Well, that just started to change thought in my thinking. Well, wait a minute. If DNA can live in a biological unit, like a woolly mammoth, for almost 50,000 years and still have the ability to have life within it, now we're talking about nanobots. It's all that process, again, of that transhumanism.
Have you heard of CRISPR? No, I was trying to hit the unmute button. I'm looking at this.
Yeah, no, I did it all the time.
The Archons have overtaken
must interface.
Exactly. And then, hell, you could get into the chemtrails. I mean, the crap that they're spraying in there. I heard one guy said, well, what makes you think they couldn't put nanobots into that? I don't, who knows? But you were saying on CRISPR, is that right?
Well, I want to jump into CRISPR in just a moment, because that is a new technology that literally targets genome editing. It's incredible. These guys are able to change at a genetic level, at the DNA level, and what it does is it essentially takes parts of the DNA that are already there, and it activates them, and it alters the makeup of that specific part of the DNA that then interjects with the rest of the DNA, and it can change entire data sets. And so essentially it used to be, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, et cetera, they knew, okay, well, you've got a DNA strand, you've got that many sets of A, B, C, et cetera, that all equal certain points to do certain things. They have certain objections, they have specific traits. Well, now, this new technology, instead of it taking a year to just do a couple of minor changes, they can do major changes in a matter of a few days to a couple of weeks. They can change the entire makeup. So this is the kind of stuff. I saw a video that had uncovering in Jordan of these really cool Egyptian sculptures and stuff of antiquity. And this one in particular that caught my eye was a mummy that was, it was like a gold mummy essentially, but above the mummy was a half dog, half human that was laying him, that was basically over him, laying him to rest. And I'm thinking of Anubis, the god of the dead, essentially, of the underworld. And some people are freaked out of Anubis, and some people look at Anubis at a different level. And I can definitely see both sides there. But what I do see is back then they looked at Anubis as the, taking you, basically the god of the underworld. So I don't think he was necessarily looked at as bad. But here's where I'm going with this. Did they have genetically altered beings at that point? Or were there beings at that point that were half dog, half human, or had a bird head, the head of an ibis, and then a different body of a human or something like that? I don't know. I mean, a lot of people do speculate that happened because of all the ancient sculptures and stuff like that. So maybe they were doing that kind of stuff back then. Something happened. They went off-world. They went underworld. They disappeared for a while. They took a long nap. Maybe they're in, like you said, some type of cryogenics chamber, sleeping until a specific time to come back out. I don't know. But this CRISPR stuff, if you haven't heard of CRISPR.
All the way into Babylonian.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. And so while you were talking, I actually pulled up an article on there's a magazine that comes out, it's an evening that gives you on what they're doing on DNA. And they've now have completed synthetic DNA. They've synthesized the DNA, and it's synthetic DNA is what they're calling it. And we're seeing this done in the lab. So tell me we're not but one step away. And I have an idea behind this, is that we can now grow human ears, certain other human organisms in pigs.
And that's been proven.
Rats. Okay, that's been proven. So my question is, you see, I think maybe something happened back there in that time when I think they were advanced enough. We know that the original pharaohs were giants. They were not the normal size Egyptians. I think that something happened, could have been cosmic, come through the heavens, maybe the Nibiru, who knows? It stopped it. But just think about this, Rex. Once again, I think we are the guinea pigs. Listen, the fountain of youth. Could you imagine what that would be worth if you could figure out the genetic code that would completely redo every cell, that you could program it where you reached your optimum, which for most males would be about 25, that if we could say that same physique, that same stamina, and live the next 1,000,000 years, 2,000,000 years, the DNA seems to be endless. What would that be worth? Saying, is transhumanism the evolution? Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt there. Have you ever had a dream where you knew you were dreaming and you're like, okay, I know I'm dreaming, so I'm going to create something really cool? Sometimes when I'm dreaming, I know that I'm dreaming, so I'll literally feel like a mad scientist because I'll make stuff that I want to. But sometimes when I'm making something, it won't come out quite the way I want to. I'll be like, okay, I want a Ferrari, and I'll get like this weird bicycle or something that has one wheel. It's strange, but it's kind of like that with the with the DNA thing. If you have the opportunity to, at the molecular level, quantum level, change your DNA. I mean, they've literally got, think about this for a second. They've got robots, and I am not exaggerating. I have seen these things. Now, they're not robots that have a million functions like androids, but they've got a few key functions where they can take little pieces of matter at a quantum level, like we're talking like proton size almost, a little bit bigger than protons, and move these things around And it's so incredible because if you can do that at the quantum level, you've literally got the gray goo that can self-replicate or create a battery out of air, literally, because it's taking those little pieces and those molecules and just rewriting them like data sets, like a computer is going to do with software programming. It's that level. So if you have access to those conditions, if you have the keys to that kingdom, to that technology, why not turn yourself into, like, I would be Dr. Manhattan. That would be who I would turn myself into. Dr. Manhattan from Watchers, the blue beam guy that can like change, any dimension he wants to at any time. So I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. X-Men kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I just read last week, in fact, I have it in my files, where these quantum theorists, they're looking at this, and they've been studying the microtubulars of the cerebral cortex of our brain. And they're doing experiments where they think they have actually recorded the living soul leaving the bioform body. And they said what happens is that these tubulars that are in the cerebral cortex, that there is, when the person starts to die, that you can actually see them releasing what they say is actually code, genetic code, makes you up, right? And they said that when they've seen people come back that are resuscitated, that these tubulars feel back up. Is that what holds us? Is that where DNA is actually housed? Is that the source of it? These are the questions I ask, because it's all about the DNA. And then when I look at what's happening through the cosmic rays coming in, I mean, Rex, you and I and all the rest on planet Earth, I mean, this last weekend, we all just, I think as I read one report, we all just smoked the equivalent of about 1,000 packs of cigarettes. That was the amount of the cosmic protons that are hitting us right now, and it's affecting our DNA. And so I'm saying to myself, if you knew this, if you knew that this was coming in, if you knew that this was potentially going to have an impact on the bio-life forms of this planet, well, wouldn't it make sense that you would want to kick up that experiments or results faster? And I think that's what transhumanism is leading us to.
I also see that the transhuman movement, it could be used for so many beneficial things. Once again, if your soul...
Oh, it could.
If your soul is intact, pure intentions, and there's a way to change your physical self to where you could consume less, live longer, do more, be stronger, run faster, I don't see what's bad in that. But at the same time, if you're doing that, does that have an impact on your spirit? And if you get something like that without having to go through certain physical exercises, does that change your spirit to a certain degree? I don't know. I mean, these are all things that you have to do more research on, I guess, and do the introversion, find it in yourself. And, if you pray about it. If you meditate about it. And I think that will give you the answer. But, and we're going into some pretty far out conversations here. And for those that have a chance to listen to this presentation, remember, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I'm presenting is just theory. It's ideas, it's opinions, it's possibilities. So I'm not taking any of this as absolute fact.
It's what Carl Sagan did. No. And listen, I think we got to just state that, Rex, that this is just critical thinking. It's not that, isn't science, though, really the contradiction of two theories?
Yeah.
That's how we get our physical laws. You may have a Newtonian theory that counters the standard theory. The big thing that I found interesting was that Einstein never finished how he could reconcile the standard model. And we base all of our science on those physics.
If you create life, and then people say, well, what's life? You're not creating life because only God can create life. Well, even in Scripture, doesn't source say...
Well, explain the Nephilim to me then. I see that argument is void because Genesis 6:4 displaces that. If you had fallen watchers or angels intermixing with a human, you have DNA mixing, right? It created life. And if you read the book of Enoch, God said, I had no part of those bastards. They have no part of me in them. Applies you can create life outside of God.
Well, and it's
Sorry to step
interesting.
in on that, but
No, that's okay, and I'm glad you brought that up, and I appreciate that. And I wonder sometimes too with these biblical scriptures and with the way that the Nephilim and other entities and people are described. Now, if you read the Old Testament, where there's multiple scriptures that talk about how God essentially tells his people, and I can't remember exactly which ones, to go kill every man, woman, child, and even the livestock and even the animals of these specific areas. And I've heard Nephilim or something similar to that, and therefore that they were evil, and a lot of people kind of have that mindset. But what if what we read about was from you usually only hear about the history of the victors. And with the Mandela effect, like you talked about, and with so much out there that has been mistranslated or used for certain purposes, what's to say that the Holy Bible that we have access to today hasn't been skewed or misrepresented or altered or certain things done to it to be the ultimate mind control tool to make people think something that could be completely wrong? And I bring this up to a lot of people, and usually what I hear is, well, that's God's foundation. God is not going to let anything interfere with that foundation. And if that's the case, hey, I get it. I understand. Yet what if? I mean, because there's enough in the Bible that contradicts things to me. And when I go to websites, like there's this website in particular that kind of has a lot of the saints in the Bible that you would look at from a person that maybe isn't religious or wasn't raised that way. And keep in mind, I was raised Christian. I mean, I've read the Bible. I've read Revelation over a dozen times. I've studied it. I've researched it. And there's some incredible information in there. But there's a lot of stuff in there that you read, especially from somebody that maybe wasn't raised that way. And you're going, what the? That's murder. That's torture. That shouldn't be there. That's not right. I don't want to go stone my kids to death if they don't believe in God.
And I love this fact. You see, my position is this: every religion is man-made. That's a fact. Every religion is man-made, and it is man-inspired and man-propagated. And